All right, guys, we're going to hop straight into this review. We will not, for the purpose of this video, we will not be going over every single question. So 1 through 65, it's just not going to work like that. I'm going to go over 5 questions at random with you guys to help you guys finish your study guide. If you have any questions regarding 1 through 65, we'll get to that on Wednesday in our Zoom session. If you have questions, say on number 14, and we don't get to it in this video, that's okay. Just ask the question come Wednesday. Today, for the purpose of this video, like I said, it's just going to be 5 quick ones. We'll go over them real fast, similar to what we've done in class, and then you guys are on your way. It'll give you a good start on your review. For the sake of time, we're just going to get started. Number 2. Number 2 is going to be the first one we start with. Number 2, who made the decision to drop the atomic bomb on Japan? So if you think back to last week, we went over Chapter 14, Section 4 on ending the war in Europe and in the Pacific. So we went over this essentially last week. You also wrote about it in your exit slip activity that you had to complete for homework. So this one shouldn't be rocket science. Who made the decision to drop the atomic bomb on Japan? It was President Harry Truman. If you remember back, FDR was in office for 3 full terms, and he was working on his 4th term when he died. He's the only president to serve more than 2 terms. Harry Truman took over for Roosevelt. He met with his advisors about this new destructive weapon, and after talking and dialoguing with his advisors, they made the decision that it would save American lives to drop the bombs. On August 6th, they dropped a bomb on Hiroshima. August 9th, they dropped the bomb on Nagasaki. And the following day, war was ended. So hundreds of thousands of people essentially died from these 2 bombings in these 2 civilian cities. Definitely a hard decision to make as president, but ultimately he's the one that made the decision. So President Harry Truman made the decision to drop the bomb on Japan. That's the answer for number 2. You can find that on page 486 in your textbook. So page 486, you can read more about it in your textbook. We'll move on to number 3 since it's right there. What event happened on December 7th, 1941? So on December 7th, 1941 was the bombing of Pearl Harbor by the Japanese forces. It's on page 474 in your textbook. Early in the morning on December 7th, 1941, the Japanese bombed the American fleet at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. Pearl Harbor in Hawaii, I'm not sure if many of you guys have gone there. It's amazing. I actually went there. Here's my ticket a few months ago before this quarantine started. It's full of history. It's a really sombering place. Many men died there. But December 7th, 1941 was the transition from us being neutral in the war to us actually being in the war. So that kind of pushed the issue. That got us involved in the war. Americans, remember, we started out neutral. If you want to say neutral, the American people were shocked and horrified by what had gone down at Pearl Harbor. President Roosevelt the next day asked Congress to declare war on Japan. The rest is history. We joined the war, ended up winning the war, but that was that turning point for us to join. So that's your answer. December 7th, 1941 was the day of the Pearl Harbor attack. We'll move on to number 22. So number 22, right here. What was the Lend-Lease Act? Number 22, you're going to find in your textbook on page 473. What it was the United States did not want to be drawn into war. So President Roosevelt wanted to sell and lend war materials to any country whose defense the president deems was vital to the defense of the United States. So any country that the president deemed vital to the defense of the United States, we lended war material to them. So we supplied arms to those who were fighting for freedom. So that was the Lend-Lease Act. If you want to say America was neutral during this time, I would have to question that. They were lending the Allies war materials to fight for freedom and democracy. So obviously the United States was neutral, but they were leaning towards one side. So the Lend-Lease Act, what it was it allowed us to sell or lend war materials to any country who was fighting for freedom. That's the answer to number 22. You'll find that page 473 in your textbook. We'll transition to number 26. Number 26, what is appeasement? What is appeasement? What it is, you'll find it on page 461 in your textbook. Appeasement was giving in to the demands of an aggressor in order to keep the peace. So at the start of the war, we were trying to do that with Hitler. So the Allies were trying to do that to Hitler. But Hitler tested the will of the Western democracies, and he believed it was weak. Remember the Treaty of Versailles, which ended World War I, the Germans detested. They hated it. So during this time, Hitler was seeing what he could get away with, and he got away with quite a bit without war actually starting until, obviously, September 1st, 1939, when the Germans invaded Poland. But he built up the army prior to that, which was in defiance of the Treaty of Versailles. In 1936, he sent troops into the demilitarized zone in the Rhineland, which was bordering France at the time. The Western democracies denounced his moves, but took no real action. So they didn't like what he was doing, but we didn't do anything about it. So we adopted this policy of appeasement. So appeasement, what it was giving into the demands of an aggressor in order to keep the peace. We didn't want to fight another war. That's your answer to number 26, page 461. We'll get into one more. We'll scroll down a little bit, see what we can get into. We'll go with number 60. Number 60. What was Hitler's final solution? What was Hitler's final solution? Hitler's final solution, you'll find in page 470 of your textbook. 470 of your textbook. What it was the organized murder, mass murder of European Jews under his control. So during the war and during his time of power, Hitler never personally killed 6 million Jews, but he put in the orders to do so. So approximately 6 million Jews were executed at the time. They were sent into these concentration camps. They ended up being death camps. I was able to go to the Holocaust Museum, the National Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. a few months back. And it's super, super, super awesome. It's very, very sad, but filled with history. You see in the museum itself, you see 4 floors of different things that went on during the war. So you see what it was like living in these concentration camps. Obviously, not the full experience, but you see what these people had to go through. So what it was, the final solution was the execution, organized execution of millions and millions of Jews. Remember, Hitler didn't just target the Jews. That was his main focus, but 5 million other people died because of his reign during this time. So those are 5 questions from the study guide. Remember, come Wednesday when we have our Zoom session, you guys are going to have access to 1 through 65 if you guys want to ask. Cool. Make sure you're working on this. It's going to be due on Sunday. But if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. I'm more than happy to help you out. Hope you guys are staying safe and enjoy the rest of your Monday. All right, guys.